Okay, so now it's being recorded. I'm going to put everyone on mute except for Dr. Wistrunk to sort of reduce the background. But don't worry, later in the session, you'll have an opportunity to speak or ask questions. So hello again, my name is Dr. Sultan Jenkins. I'm an associate professor in the Natural Sciences Department here at LaGuardia. I'm joined here by Dr. Walter Sistrunk. He's a professor over in the Education and Language Acquisition Department. Say hello to everyone, Walter.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
All right. So his research interests include syntax, language acquisition, comparative linguistics, and the linguistic origin of hip hop. So you're going to hear from Dr. Sistrunk a little bit later. All right. So the title of this seminar is The N Word, Can I Say It? This seminar is one of the United Wounds of America Dialogues of Healing series that's sponsored by Project Dive. So before we get started, I would like to mention this disclaimer first. So during this session, you're going to hear on multiple occasions a word that some people find offensive. That word is nigger. The purpose of this session is to provide information and context about this word. At no point when this word is said during this session is it meant to offend, denigrate, insult, or negatively target any group of individuals. Okay. So I'm going to start off with a brief history of the word and its uses in American society. And then afterwards, I'm going to ask Dr. Sistrunk some questions and he'll give his perspective on various aspects of the word. When he's finished, I'll open up the room for any questions or comments you may have. You can type your question or comment in the chat room, or you can use the raise your hand icon, and then I will unmute you so that you can verbally speak your question or comment. Now, given the controversial nature of this word, I humbly ask that no matter your feelings, that you pose your question or comment in a respectful manner. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so can everyone see my screen? Can you see it?
Yes,
No.
sir.
All right, beautiful.
Yes.
All right. All right. So I think the OJ trial was back in 94, 95. Some of you may be too young to remember this trial. Others like myself definitely remember this trial. So, OJ Simpson was a ex NFL player accused of murdering his ex-wife and her friend Ronald Goldman. And so during the trial, you had one of the prosecutors, Mr. Christopher Darden, going against one of the members of the defense team led by Johnny Cochran. So you can see both of these individuals are Black. And so at one point during the trial, Mr. Cochran was going to play these tapes, these controversial tapes from Mark Furman, one of the detectives on the case. And in these tapes, Mark Furman is heard saying the word nigger multiple times. Now, Mr. Darden objected to the playing of these tapes because, he described the word nigger as, one of the filthiest and nastiest words in the English language. And so he thought that if African Americans heard this word on the jury, that somehow their objectivity will become compromised. And then Mr. Cochran obviously objected to such an insinuation because he felt that, given the centuries of oppression, that in spite of this depression, this word has never, affected the objectivity of Blacks. And so, he thought that it was offensive for Mr. Darden to even suggest that. Now, Mr. Darden most likely was just trying to protect his case because, he felt if Black jurors heard that, then they'll most likely acquit Mr. Simpson, which he ultimately did. Okay. Now, this word has been around for a long time. One of the earliest writings of it can be seen in the writings of Mr. John Rolfe. He was one of the Jamestown colonists in the early 17th century. He married Pocahontas. I want to emphasize the word married because you have to sort of question whether or not she had a choice in the matter. But anyway, in 1619, he wrote a letter to Mr. Sir Edwin Sandys, where he described this Dutch man of war ship that offloaded 20 and odd niggers. And then most lexicographers trace these words negger, nigger, negro back to the Latin word niger for black. All right. So, but then you had some that people suggest that the word nigger was actually intended as a neutral term because there was this anti-slavery activist Samuel Sewall who described, wrote the word many times in his writings. However, during that time period, like back in 1651, there's a poet, Reginald Scott, he described in his book, Discovery of Witchcraft, an oogly devil with fangs like a dog and skin like a niger and a voice roaring like a lion. That's how, that's not a misspelling there. That's how they spelled those words back then. Now, the so-called modern spelling of the word nigger can be attributed to Robert Burns. Mr. Burns, in his poem, The Ordination, he wrote, and this is trying to mimic a Scottish accent, come let a proper text be read and touch it of the vigor, how graceless ham led at his dad, which made Canaan a nigger. So, this word is not, new, obviously. It's been around for a long time. Um, Back in 1998, this police chief, Charles Williams, he was appointed by President Bush, Bush Jr., the second president, to lead this panel commission about the use of police tactics. And so he actually said in a meeting that he didn't consider the word nigger to be offensive. All right. He said he was born and raised with blacks. He had various blacks that he called Nigger Charlie, Nigger Sam, Nigger Joe, and he had all the respect for these individuals. It makes me wonder, why can't he just call them Sam, Charlie, and Joe? Why they got to be Nigger Sam, Nigger Joe, and Nigger Charlie? Again, you'll have to ask Mr. Williams, but I don't anticipate that he'll be open for discussion on this particular point that he brought up. And then some people believe that how the word is used is what makes it a slur. So there was a senator from West Virginia, Senator Robert Byrd, and he actually told a national television audience that there are white niggers. I've seen a lot of white niggers in my time. I'm going to use that word. So I guess he's probably referring to low-income white individuals that they can also be called niggers. Now, if you actually look up a word in the Merriam-Webster dictionary, you'll see nigger as defined as a black person, usually to taken to be offensive. And back in 1997, Ms. Delphine Abraham, she started an effort along with the NAACP to have the word redefined. And so ultimately what happened was that Merriam-Webster, they stuck with their original definition. So this is a screenshot from the website. So they stuck with their original definition of the word, but then they added a usage paragraph, basically describing that, it is considered offensive, even though some black people, use it amongst themselves. So basically just giving you a more comprehensive picture of the word. Now, the reason why we're here is this word has a perceived increased usage by non-blacks. And so some people sort of attribute it to the more popularization of rap music. So, rap music has been around since the mid to late 1970s. And so, if you start from the rappers alike from the Sugar Hill Gang up until 1998, that word, nigger, wasn't said a whole lot in rap songs. But then in 1998, NWA, it says, so some of you may not know, NWA is the acronym that stands for Niggers with Attitude. So when NWA came out with their album Straight Outta Compton, and that album blew up, that sort of started this whole domino effect. Okay, and so in their album, the word niggers uttered about 46 times, and then just as a reference, Huckleberry Finn, which is a people my generation were, we were told to read Huckleberry Finn in school. The word nigger is written 215 times in Huckleberry Finn. So again, rap music didn't create the word or anything like that, but as I said, it's sort of become more popular because of rap music. Now, obviously, some people feel that there's two spellings of this word and that the two spellings have different meanings. So you have nigger with an ER and you have nigga with a J. I mean, not with a J, with an A, I'm sorry. So some people have adopted the philosophy that nigger is the one that's meant to be offensive and nigga is a sign of infection. You have various supporters of the nigger version. Basically, it's a way of claiming a negative word and turning it to something positive. Now, I can understand that logic, but at the same time, there's a problem with that logic. For instance, when you hear in rap songs talking about someone being a real nigga, that person is actively committing various types of crimes, rapes, assaults, etc. So you hear that a lot in a lot of rap songs. Chris Rock, in one of his skits, he described the difference between black people and niggas. So he said niggas don't like to read, and they sort of torment black people. Now, keep in mind the nigga, the GA ending, black people didn't really create that spelling. That actually came from Southern whites, who's to them Negro sounded like nigga. So that's where that original version of the word came from, with basically racist white people from the South saying that word. So, the origin of the GA version doesn't necessarily have a benevolent meaning. Now, the nigger version basically is used by non-blacks as an excuse to justify their uses of it. So you see two pictures here. The one at the top, that individual, his name is Shorty Yo. He is a rapper based out of Philadelphia. Him and another rapper named Beanie Siegel had a beef a little while back because Shorty Yo says the word nigga in his rap songs. Now you can obviously see that Mr. Shorty Yo is not black. He is of the Caucasian persuasion. So he, in his meaning that, nigga is a slang term, and he described himself as non-racist. And then in the lower picture there, you see Miss Jennifer Lopez. I think it was in the 90s. She had a song with Ja Rule's behind her, looking at her in a certain way. And so she says the word nigga, once. And so she caught some heat because Miss Lopez is of Puerto Rican descent. And so again, you have this common feeling amongst non-blacks that nigga is not meant in the racist way, and that is the ER version that's the one that's meant to be racist. Then Tupac tried to come up with a clever acronym for the nigger word. So in his mind, he said NIGGA stands for never ignorant and getting goals accomplished. Um, hey, that's very, that's unique. But again, I guess it all depends on, is that really, something to like be proud of, no matter how you slice it. So again, I guess it depends on your point of view. Now, this duality that a lot of people have with this word sort of ties into some of the works of W.B. Du Bois. So it's in one of his writings, W.B. Du Bois talks about the double consciousness that being a Negro in America sort of creates. So in one of his writings, he says, one ever feels his two-ness, an American, a Negro, two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals in one dark body, whose dogged strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder. So basically, in short, he sort of emphasizes that, especially during his time, could a black person or Negro really be, truly an American, right? Because, at the time, a lot of conflict going on, even now. So it's sort of like, we sort of hold a unique place in this, country of ours? Can you just be an American and not necessarily seen as a black person or Negro first? All right. So that's just the brief history of the word and its usage. So now I'm going to ask Dr. Sistrunk a few questions, and get, like I said, get his perspective of it. And then, like I said, later on, I'm going to open up the floor so that everyone else has a chance to, um, you know, ask questions or post comments. All right. So, Walter, are you ready?
Sure, sure. Yes.
All right. So, first question: why is this word so controversial?
uh, I mean, it's controversial for obvious reasons. One, it is a racial slur. Um, uh, and you went through the history, and I was just say like all terms, all words, they just start off as neutral. This term, it started off as neutral. They just simply refer to Black people as that word. And in its early usage, Black people will refer to one another as the word too. But just like many words, over time, the social context changes its meaning. Because we can say a similar word in which, due to the historic context, that African Americans were also associated with, and that was slave. And slave is actually a word that derives from Slavic. So we can say at that time that that word was used as a racial slur. Um, and then we see now that it's just a neutral word referring to people who are held in servitude against their will. Um, so, so in a nutshell, that's the reason why it's such a
Okay.
controversial word, because of this historic material and cultural context.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, in your opinion, is there really a difference between nigger with an ER versus nigga with a GA?
Uh, I would say, it's the same word, right?
Hmm.
Um, except I would say nigger is what you'll call mainstream American English, and nigga is uh, African American English. Okay, so African American usually, like the phonological process, um, it's a result of, I would say, uh, second language influence. Or we'll just say it's a survival of a second language influence, and that would be an African linguistic influence. So most African languages they don't end with consonants,
Hmm.
and basically, so the phonetic process reduces the final consonant cluster, and it ends it with a vowel. So similar people who speak languages that are like what we'll call consonant vowel, and it always ends, the syllable always ends with a vowel, they'll do the same thing. So a Japanese speaker, instead of um, uh, saying car, they may say ka,
Hmm.
right? So that's just a phonetic process. But the difference in terms of meaning comes in that, in the context where a white person uses it, it's usually a racial slur. When
Right.
a Black person uses it, it's a ritual insult. And when we
Right.
talk about a ritual insults are, the best example that we can give is like your mama jokes, the dozens, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and there's rules when you use ritual insults, right?
Hmm.
And the rule is, I can talk about my mama, but you can't.
Right.
So it's the same thing. So it's just like the in-group thing. So in terms of the N-word nigga being a ritual insult, it's just like any other ritual insult. So every culture uses ritual insults. So it's not insulting, case in point, when I was at Michigan State as a grad student, the administrative assistant, she used to refer to her kid as my little shit.
Wow.
Yeah, that's my little shit. And and I asked her, like, just like going with the experiment as a ritual insult. What if someone else called your boy a little shit? She was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, we'll get, two
Yeah.
pieces of biscuit,
Yeah. Yeah.
extra spicy." um, but these are how ritual insults work.
Mhm.
But for some reason, when it comes to African American, it's a mystery. But
You're right.
every other group uses ritual insults, right?
Right. Right.
Um, so it's
Okay.
it's not anything special.
Are you
Right.
saying
Right.
racial insult or ritual insult?
Ritual, Ritual.
Ritual.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. So a scholar who dealt with or who yeah, he has a good study on ritual insult. His name is William Labov. That's Lobov. It's an old study. It was done like in 1969. Um, um, and I think here in New York, he talks about ritual insults and the structure of ritual insults. Um, so, the rules of using, in other words, there are rules for using the N word. Okay.
Yeah. So remember, I talked about, and you actually have a specialty in the linguistics of hip hop. So,
Yes.
I guess, do you feel that hip hop rap has any culpability in the increased usage or perceived increased usage of the word by non-blacks?
I would say, uh, it doesn't have, because like you said, the word has always been in popular culture. Because
Right.
I'm just looking at, when you talk about exploitation movies, it was there. It's always in literature. As you were saying, the anti-racist novel written by Mark Twain, Huckleberry Finn, uses the term. So it's always been, um, in popular culture. Um,
Right.
and I would just have to add that, a lot of people don't know how to use or know how to contextualize the book and teach the book Huckleberry Finn. so,
Yeah.
um, so that's the problem with it. So the problem is not the word itself, but it's how it's contextualized.
Right.
Um, and I would just say, because I was just looking at it was a Jamaican movie, and the name of the movie was "Every Nigga Is a Star."
Mm.
And there's a song by the same name, and it was made in 1973. So, like I said, but I would just say that hip hop, like, kind of redefined the word again, in terms of its relevancy. It because when you use the word, like even in NWA, it's a form of defiance. It's just
Right.
like, and it goes back basically to how you ended your discussion with asking the question, how can you be both Black and American? And
Hmm.
this was the question that Du Bois was asking. And at the time when he posed the question, Americans were asking that very question too. So this was um, part of the American intellectual stream of consciousness that was going on. Because Walt Whitman and Emerson were also asking, how can you can you have individual strivings and both national strivings? So, you know, the boys took that question and flipped it on its head, is how can you have Black strivings and African American strivings? And I would say that this same vein of consciousness is imbued in the usage of the word nigga, is because, when we talk about niggas with attitudes, we're talking
Right.
about people who are within America, but somewhat outside. right?
Right.
So as public, or as a lot of people um, emphasize, or the great sociologist emphasized, I forget his name right now, but he described African Americans as a nation within a nation. So, and this is how we can basically encapsulate the usage of hip hop, or the usage of the N word within hip hop. We
Right.
are people within a nation, or a nation within a nation.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's a lot of times people say, this nation was founded by immigrants and migrants, and sort of miss the actual meanings of those two words, because certain Black people did not immigrate or migrate here. Like,
Yeah.
both of those terms imply an active choice to like move to a different area, and obviously,
Right.
our history is not doesn't really embrace that. So I guess the next question I want to ask is sort of a very open-ended question, and obviously depends on perspective. Um, is it okay? And I want to use air quotes for okay.
Scared.
Yeah. Is it okay for non-Blacks to say it?
Okay, before I answer that question, I just got to remind you that I am a linguist.
Right.
And a linguist's job is to describe language, to scientifically describe language, and not to advocate how people should use it. Okay, so we
Okay.
also describe how language is used. So first off, we just have to recognize that people are using the N word, period.
True. Yeah.
It's just a matter of fact. People are using it. People who are Black are using the N word.
Right.
And they're using it, and I would say properly, they're using it as a ritual insult, right?
Okay.
So when they refer to their friends, they're using this slur as a ritual insult. I guess. I don't know if they're using it right or not, but
Right.
because I don't. So the question is do they recognize it as an insult? So
Okay. Yeah, that's a better question.
Some of them, when they hear the word, some of them are second language learners, and they hear the word and they just think it's a slang term.
Right.
And this is the same thing, because a friend brought it to my attention. He was from Spain. So there's people in Spain that are using the term, and they don't know it's, historic or cultural, context.
Right.
Um, um, and you can say the same thing in like other throughout the African diasporas, that people are using the word. So you can say in Jamaica, they're using the word. So what's his name? Beanie Man, the famous known.
Oh, dang. I know you talked about, can't remember his name.
Yeah. But he uses the name. But they have their own version, their own pronunciation of the same word. I can't even pronounce it. But I heard it in a song once, and it's clearly just an insult. So when they say nigga, okay, it's cool. But when they say it in terms of the Jamaican way, it's an insult. You might, you'll get into a fight.
Yeah.
So there, it's parallel. It has a parallel to how we would say nigger and nigga.
Okay.
So it definitely has that parallel in like the Jamaican context. So
okay. So a lot of times the intent, well, probably not just a lot, but every time, the intent behind it is definitely influenced by, where you grew up.
Yes.
Because this is just a short person. So like I'm from the South, and so it was said by people that I know who were Black, in both ways, as a a word of unity, but also like if you want to insult somebody,
Right.
and just to be transparent, I used it when I was in college, but that was mainly because I was at a Black school, a Black college, and
Right.
this was the 90s, and like I said, hip hop really blew up during that time period, and so it was said all the time, and mostly, again, as a word of unity. But then once I left undergrad and I moved to different parts of the country and went to grad school and got older and supposedly wiser. Um, I find myself not using it as much,
Right.
mainly because I don't operate in those circles where I'm around a lot of Black people. I'm a biologist, in training, and so there's not a whole lot of Black people, and so that's one of those sort of unwritten rules and using the word. Like if you're around non-Blacks, you're not supposed to use it in any text or any form. So I guess going forward, like, and I'm obviously asking to predict going forward, like where do you see the uses of this word sort of leaning? Like, do you see people just trying to actively convert it from a slur into a slang term that's acceptable by everyone, or are you going to have people continuously pushing back on its use? Both by Blacks and especially non-Blacks.
Yeah, I would say, well, before I answer that, just to give you more insight on, like, should it be used or not. So when it's used in other communities, I would say that they are using it wrong,
Yeah.
simply because just like a lot of slang terms are other terms that are cultural and specifically African American, are um, I guess, adapted into like other cultures,
Right.
a lot of times when they acquire it wrong. So case in point, and the term player. So we know that the term player basically means a person that takes a situation and it works it to their advantage.
Hmm.
But in mainstream community, it just has a sexual connotation in terms of a person who uh, takes uh, a situation, or a person who playing with various people, manipulating people in order to get like a sexual advantage.
Right.
So we know that fits the term player, but that's not the only one. So it just goes to show that when a term is used in a particular community and it's adopted by another community, since they're outside that community, a lot of times they acquire the term, you know, wrongly, and they use
Right.
it, wrongly.
Right.
So, uh, but in terms of the future, I think the word is going to be around as long as racism is around. So it's not going to neutralize until we just saw this race problem in America.
Right.
And
Right.
I don't think that's going to be resolved in our lifetime. So
No.
the word is
No.
always going to be around. So it's, and I think it's always going to exist as a ritual insult for African Americans,
Yeah.
simply because just like other ritual insults, so it's just like when I can just call my friend an asshole, right?
Yeah.
And I can only call my friend an asshole because he knows that I'm using it as a ritual insult and not trying to insult him.
Right.
But it's just like if someone is not part of my set and I say, "Hey, what up, asshole?" It's on. So it's the same thing with the word nigga.
Yeah.
You can say
Yeah.
it to another Black person, but if they're not a part of your set,
Yeah.
they might chin check you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's
yeah,
like you gotta be mindful. People try to use the whole First Amendment argument, justifying their ability to say it. And I keep trying to tell people that the First Amendment protects you from the government. Like
yeah,
you're not supposed to be locked up because of the words you say, but there are other potential consequences. And I'm not trying to promote violence or anything like that, but
but
keep in mind that
you have
you
to
say
say,
it to the wrong person. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah. It doesn't protect you. Freedom of speech doesn't protect you from inciting a riot.
Right.
So, and calling a person a racial slur, I think fits in that category.
Yeah.
So, and I think, when we were having a conversation before, So it's like I said, there's rules to it. And I just gave you the rules in terms of like ritual insults. Like, you know, if a person is not within your sphere of camaraderie, you know, that word, just like any other ritual insult, could be taken as a direct insult. It can be taken literally, right? Because you don't have that camaraderie to use it as a ritual insult.
Right.
So case in point, and I would just say that unlike other, well, I would just say, yeah, just like certain certain ritual insults, this one happens to be cultural and racial in terms of the dividing line. Some of them are gender, right? Gender specific. So a woman can use a ritual insult. They can use bitch as a ritual insult. But if another guy calls a woman that, you know, you cross that gender line, or I would say that sex line, and it's, you know, it's an insult, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No matter, you know, even if you know the woman, you know, for a long time, like I have obviously I have female friends that I love to death, but I would never think to like call them that, even if we're joking around. So yeah, you got to, you know, everyone has to be cognizant of that.
Yeah.
Sort of like
so African American too. So I just remember a Puerto Rican friend used that term with me. He used the N word with me. He was like, my nigga, and I was just like, and he, you know, if he looked black, maybe, you know, it would be acceptable, but he looked white. And I was just like, dude, don't call me that. I was like, you know, for GP, general principle, I will have to chin check you because, you know, because I was telling them, if you was around my boys, you know, not only would they beat you up, but they would beat me up for allowing you to call me that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you know, I had to chin check you for GP.
Yeah.
So there's rules to it, you know, and it's just like, and it seems like everyone wants to respect those rules, except when it comes to Black people, right?
Exactly.
You know, you can't go around and, you know, you can't, you know, because like I said, white people use ritual insults too. They call themselves crackers. They call themselves rednecks.
Right.
But we can't go, you know, and Italians call themselves, what is it? What do they call
Guinea or something?
Yes.
Guidos.
Guidos. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
But it's just like, you know, you can't cross that racial line when it comes to like using it as a racial, a ritual insult. I can't call you know, Italian person Guido or Guinea, or, you know what I'm saying? But they can refer to themselves at it because it is a ritual insult.
So sort of piggybacking off of that, Avis posted a question. He says like, what, I don't know if it's a he or she, I'm sorry. Avis said, what happens when a real close non-Black friends feel elevated enough to say, you're my nigga? They are trying to feel included, cool, or insulting. So like, I don't know. There's, like you said, that depends on the person who they talking to.
Right. But they can be out in the public, and I will say, like, they may, you know, hear another a white person referring to another Black person as, you know, a nigga, and the Black people around them may be insulted. So it's just like within your circles and things like that, you can do it. Because there was a situation. There was this white female rapper. I think her name was what was her name? Sarah Duncan. She was named after one of these snacks.
Talking about the one from Australia that talked like.
No. This was back, or this was before her. But you're talking about Iggy Azalea.
Yeah.
This one was I don't think she ever used the term. But this woman, her name was was it Dunkin' Donuts or no? What is that little Debbie? Little Debbie.
Oh, okay.
I think she called herself like Little Debbie or something like that. After one of those little snack cakes.
Okay.
but you know, she had black friends and she had a video and she's calling them the N-word and things like
Whoa.
that.
Yeah.
And no one said anything to it until she said it in a song. And it's just like,
Yeah.
you know,
Too late by then. It's like,
yeah, it was just
yeah.
like this controversy, you know, even her, so one of her managers was, you know, a black guy, and they're interviewing her, and he was just trying to explain to her, to everybody, that she wasn't racist. And
Mm,
they were just saying, but yeah, once you put this out there,
it's
she
hard.
can do this in her little circle, but she can't expect everyone to be accepting of that,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And he
Exactly.
asked, you know, her manager, who was black, so you would let little Debbie call your daughter a nigger?
Right.
You know, and he was just like, no.
No. Yeah.
So
Um, yeah, so I'm gonna open up the floor or room, however you want to call it. If anybody have any questions, um, please just try to, you know, be respectful but as honest as you possibly can. So does anyone have any questions or comments?
I got a comment. I got a comment, Sultan.
Okay.
I want to basically assert that there is an element of power to this word. The word was originally co-opted by white people, and it was used as an oppressive term, and it helped to victimize our people. And I think one of the things that has happened over the last several years is that word has been taken back. And I think hip hop has been a vehicle to take that word back and empower us to use that word. So in a way, it's kind of broken the chains of victimization.
Right.
Not a day goes by that I don't use that word. I've been socialized to use that word. We use it as a pronoun. I don't know about in other places, but in New York, it's like, you my nigga, even if I don't know you, what's up, nigga? How you doing?
Right.
So at the end of the day, I think it's interesting what you guys are talking about, because I've just realized that the word, how it's used, is used differently in different places. So in New York, we don't use it as, like I think Walter said, a ritual, so we use that word all the time, all the time. And I think when we start to take that word back, when we continue to allow the process to take the word back, that will disempower the word. So,
Okay.
so it's not unusual for me to get into kind of a verbal altercation, particularly when I was younger. I realized that the person who is calling me a nigga, if I call that person a nigga back, that shit, like that, they lost their mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now I'm taking the power back from the people who've used that word to oppress me and victimize me.
Right.
So I think, go ahead, Sultan.
Yeah. Yeah. So like you said, it's basically a reclamation project. Like, it was used, for a long time as an insult. So basically the people who try to reclaim it, that belongs to the people, like the people who are the source of the insult. And so like when other non-blacks try to use it, that's where the problem sort of comes in.
But they also they try to provoke you with it.
Right, that too. Yeah, yeah. It's like
so, but I think if we don't allow ourselves to be provoked by something that belongs to us.
Right.
I love what you're saying, Miss Bryant. It reminds me of a documentary where Dave Chappelle and Maya Angelou. There's like this little documentary where they're having dinner together, and it's just like filming them getting to know each other, admiring each other, all that, and they're adjacent celebrity. But as we know, Dave Chappelle, he like uses the N-word quite often, and it came up in conversation between Dave Chappelle and Maya Angelou. Is the N-word okay to use? Like, what is Maya Angelou asked Dave Chappelle, why do you use the N-word so much? And his response was very similar to yours. It's like, yeah, let's take I want to use it so much, like that it's so used that it doesn't even have power anymore. It's like if you say I love you to everyone, it doesn't have that substance anymore. Whereas like if you say I love you to only people that you're close to, that like, it has more meaning, more power in it. So that was what he was saying, what you're saying. And then and it's interesting, it's like I totally agree with both stances, but I take the stance that Maya Angelou takes, whereas she describes the N-word as poison. And she's like, if you can put poison in the most beautiful crystal perfume bottle, and it can look a certain way, but if it doesn't matter what bottle, what shape, what form, what vessel you put this poison in, at the end of the day, it's poison. So I, as a Black woman, I choose not to say the N word because I don't want white people, or I don't want other people to say the N word to me. Like, those were fighting words. Those are words that I was taught to like punch someone in the face if they called me that when I was growing up in Columbia, Missouri. You know, I mean, like, so for me, I love writing. I'm a poet, so but I also hear what you're saying. It's like reclaiming words is super important and empowering, especially as people of color. And that brings me to my question with for like the professors. The you were Walter, you were saying that your friend called you my nigga, and they were white passing, not white but white passing. And I was just thinking, it's like a little, it's a very relevant like branch off to what we're talking about. Like, POC is so empowering for me to like be able to, like, yeah, POC is like really good PC language. It's a acronym that's come up recently, I think, but it's kind of problematic also, because are you, as it's just an umbrella term. It doesn't necessarily mean Black or African American to be POC, a person of color. So like, if you're POC but white passing and you say the N word to you, it's something you take offense by, which is like interesting. And then my other note was like, that I want to ask you guys about was, you said nation within a nation. And I like to think about, I'm, you know, as an abolitionist, my like goal in life is to create freedom with what I have exactly right now, and show other people their freedom with exactly what they have right now. Not after you get the degree, not after you get a job promotion or finish a book. Like, what do you have right now to create freedom in your life? And you said nation within a nation, and that's super fascinating to me, because I'm constantly trying to think about my Blackness outside of whiteness. Like, what is Blackness without whiteness? What, you know, and I think that nation within a nation is so necessary to that. But then we have like the First Amendment and all of these things, and we haven't even gotten reparations yet. And I think about, like, you know, Indian reservations, and that's because they're acknowledged as a nation, that they're able to receive these you know, these government you know, just like a way to like move with their culture within
Victoria, I don't mean
their
to cut you off,
annual.
but like we have a lot of questions. So, um,
Okay.
Walter, can you answer like one of her questions so I can get to other people?
You said a lot.
I know.
Well, the one thing about POC,
Sorry.
It's
in
okay.
terms of, because I think it's complicated when you're talking about, because I think in terms of like Hispanics, a lot of times like race is conflated, because Hispanic is not a race, or even like Puerto Rican or Dominican is not a race. So it is a nationality. You know, just like American is not a race, right? Because I think now you can see on the census they have like white, Hispanic, white, non-Hispanic. And especially like in like I guess the Hispanic context, you have a lot of erasure that's going on, because they want to say that everyone is mixed, and in that sense, by saying everyone is mixed, you are actually erasing like color, because what's usually emphasized is the European aspect, the Latin, right? Because the reason why they use the term Latin in the first place is to emphasize the European origin, not the Taino, not the African. But in terms of, you know, the N-word being taken back, yes, it is, like I say, a psychological process of one, naming yourself and not letting people name you. But we have to realize that the word itself speaks to a material condition. And that material condition in which we live in is, you know, a racist society. So yeah, so that's the process. So there has been some terms that have that we have taken back and have undergone, you know, a process of what I'll call neutralization. The term has become neutral, and one of those terms is Black. So Black was just as insulting, if not more, than the word nigger, like just in the 1960s. So when you said the word Black, people were ready to fight.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So, and that was brought on like by the Negritude movement. And like, so that movement started in like the Caribbean and basically the Francophone colonized, I would say, nation states and island states. Césaire and a lot of intellectuals started the Negritude movement. And so it was basically in the French-speaking world. And then in the 1960s, it moved over to the Anglophone world. And so you can see that change. There's a video of James Baldwin and who's that comedian guy? He's still alive. Dick Gregory, and they're talking to like these Caribbean intellectuals, and they asked him about the term Black. And at the time in America, the term Black was still like an insult. And, you know, James Baldwin was like, you know, I don't know, at this time, I don't know about that. I have to think about it. You know, so at that early time, you know, the term was still undergoing its transformation. So maybe, you know, there's been efforts now by the hip hop community to redefine the term by associating it with another language. And a word that sounds similar to it is Nagus, which means king. And that's from Amharic, Ethiopian language. So, and they probably got it from like the Rastafarian culture because Haile Selassie was called Nagus Nages, and that's King of Kings. And so,
How do you spell Nagus?
Nagus. So, and you know, just like I think it was in 2019.
Hey, Walter, let me get to another question, man.
Okay.
Yeah. Shawnee, you have a question?
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Drs. Jenkins and Sistrunk, for this awesome discussion. So this may have been touched on, but for me, the better question is, why would anyone outside of being Black want, at least right now, want to say this word, right? Or this term in any context?
That's the magic word.
And for me, it's the constant way to demean and disrespect Black people. And, you know, as Dr. Sistrunk said, these are ritual insults that every single racial group and culture have. Mm-hmm. So the fact that it's still even, again, however you feel about utilizing the word, the reality is that if Black people choose to use this word, that is their choice. I don't think anyone else should use the word. I just don't. But the reason why is mainly because of what I just said, the constant way to demean Black people. As Dr. Sistrunk said, every other group has these terms. People in the LGBTQI community, you can't just say anything to them. No, you cannot. Right? That's disrespectful. Yeah. However, you could be among them and they could say whatever they want, and it's all good because that is within their culture. So that's my point.
Yeah,
I think it's a good point, and I think the reason why other people want to use the term, is you just have to think about our, again, I would say our social capital in this country. I would say that African Americans possibly were the first commodity of America. And being the first commodity of America, they still, treat us, as a commodity. So anything that we produce can be bought and sold, even our bodies. So the reason why they feel that they should say it is because of that, symbolically, since we were placed on an auction block, they still view us as that, a commodity, not fully human. So in other words, the reason why they want to use our language is because, again, it's denying us autonomy.
Right. I mean, it basically comes down to like, there's an old saying, they want our rhythm, but not our blues. You know, Tanya Hendricks, she posted in there about cultural appropriation, not to play the victim role, but if you look at all the other races in this country, like we're the most culturally appropriated of anybody. Basically when something wants to be cool, they look to us. So basically it's a way of, other races, hey, they see this little thing we got, our own little language. No, you can't have that by yourself. We want it too. And so sort of like, just trying to take something else away from us. Patricia, I think I saw, did I say your name right? Patricia? I saw
Yeah,
her
I
raise.
had a
Yeah.
a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not appearing on video, but I'm
It's
a
okay.
white woman, and but the question, as Shanae said, that who would want to use that word? I think for white kids it's difficult. I remember my son was sent out home because he used the word nigger, and the reason was he was with his friends who were using it, so they expelled him for 2 days. The school said you can't use that word.
Wow.
And that was, that was a while ago, that was in the 90s. But to me, it was interesting is how do you explain to children based on that? I mean, I agree. I don't use the word and I don't see why I should ever use the word.
Right.
But for them, I thought it was a little difficult. The school didn't have a valid explanation in my mind as to kids are playing together. He uses the word, he gets sent home. The others, it's okay because they're allowed to use it. There was no conversation. I don't know what it's now, but I thought it was interesting as a, in that sense of why use it, why not, is how do you teach, in that respect?
I mean, because the interesting thing is about kids is that, when you learn the language, I mean, even us adults, when we learn the language, we don't have the history of those words, right? Where they derive from. We don't know if the origin of the word was negative or positive. But, when you hear it, you just use it. And, a child hears that word, and it's just like any other word. It has the same zero value to it, right? Not a no social context to it. So, but then, the complication comes is when, an adult chastises the student for it and they can't explain why it's bad. And the reason why they can't explain why it's bad is because they don't want to face up to that history. The history that is present in this moment.
Yeah. I'm glad. All these questions are very good, but unfortunately we have to wrap this up. Thank you everyone for attending. I posted a link to a feedback form for this session. When you get a chance, please, fill it out. If you have any other questions about what we talked about today, you can email me. I'll put my email address in the chat room, or you can email or talk to Dr. Sistrunk. Walter, go ahead and put your email address in the chat.
Someone asked me the definition for ritual insult. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance. I was trying to write it. But if you send me an email, I'll give you that definition. Even the citation where you can read about ritual insults yourself.
Right. And I'll email a link to the, like I said, this meeting has been recorded. So I'll email a link to everyone if you want to, have a video of this. whole session. But again, I hope you found this informative. Obviously, we're not trying to tell anyone what to do. We just wanted you to think and and make your choices from there. So again, I hope everyone enjoyed this session. Thank you for coming. Take care of yourself. Be safe. Please get vaccinated, and
Okay,
hopefully we'll see.
just got mine. But
Most of you from LaGuardia, so hopefully we'll see each other in person relatively soon. Okay. Take care.
love
Be
you
safe,
all.
and
care.
we'll see you later. Okay.
Well, did you put your email in the chat, Walter?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. I can put it again if you didn't get it.
Yeah, it's going so fast. I guess I didn't get it. I'll take a picture of it. Thank you so much. Sorry if it's such a
Okay.
big encompassing thing. I didn't mean to go off on all those
It's all right.
tangents.
It's all right. It's
It's
totally understandable.
Yeah.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Have a good day.
You too.